Hi, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some tips to help you if you're overworking your watercolor flowers. This is something that's really common when you're first starting out because you're still getting used to your water control, you're still getting used to your brush strokes. This is all part of the learning process, so don't be too hard on yourself if you have found yourself overworking your flowers. I'm going to share these tips so that you can try them out, and hopefully that'll help you learn what to look out for while you're painting. So one common mistake I see is when you're painting your flowers, just gonna paint a little something right here, is that you just keep pushing around your paint. You put the strokes down, and then you just continue to work over the top of them. Now, there's nothing wrong with working over them to a degree, but I'm going to show you what happens when I keep working on this. I'm not going to let up right away. I'm just going to keep pushing this around and adding some pigment. Adding paint to it. Maybe you actually wanted some paint over here and it's just not working out as well as you'd like. Anyway, what starts to happen is you start to get those hard edges. I don't know if you've ever noticed that while you're painting, but sometimes you'll get this like soft, lighter part in the center, and then you get these uneven, kind of splotchy, hard edges. And that's a result of just overworking your painting. So I'm gonna let this kind of dry so that we can see what's happening here. And then I'm gonna show you what I would do differently on this side. So to fix that, trust in your shapes and trust in the strokes that you're putting down. If it's not dark enough yet, that's okay. You can always add another layer after it's dry. But what you're going to do is you're just going to lay that first layer down and leave it. We can come back to that in a minute and darken that up. So over here you can kind of see where it's starting to kind of go to that overworked splotchy state. I've got some lighter parts here. I've got this kind of puddle of dark paint over here. And this is really going to dry with that dark edge that we don't want when we're overworking our paintings. Now, another thing that happens, it's kind of along the same lines as this, is you'll put your first layer of paint down, and then you'll want to immediately add your second color to darken up that center. So what happens with that is because sometimes you aren't quite ready for those details to happen, and so you'll keep pushing around your color to try and get it exactly where you want it. And just that overworking, trying to push things where you want it, you'll get the same kind of result as you have up here. So if you add more water and try to push it all where you want it to go. I know I did this when I first started. So you can see I'm kind of getting that same effect. I'm getting those hard edges right along here. The color is not where I want it to be. So just kind of trying to push that color around. You're going to get the same effect. So what to do instead? you are going to paint your first layer, and you can do a couple different things. You can either wait for it to completely dry, kind of like what we're going to do up here, or you can just tap in a tiny bit of color and then just leave it and see what happens. Don't try to push it around to exactly where you want it. Some of the magic with watercolor is letting it do what it will. So now this is almost dry, so we're gonna wait just a second. Now, kind of along the same lines as these two, sometimes what I see happening is you add too many different types of colors and layers. Now, there's nothing wrong with lots of colors and lots of layers. It's just something to be mindful of as you're painting. Now I'm going to add a little bit of black to this paint just so that you can really see what I'm talking about here. And maybe that was a little bit too dark, so we're going to go back in with pink and try to fix it. So this mostly happens when you've put down a color and you're like, that's not what I wanted. Maybe if I blot this up, that'll help. And sometimes it does. I'm going to show you how painting right over the top on that wet paint sometimes does not work. Anyway, you can see that adding multiple colors over the top, maybe you didn't like one of them, you're trying to fix it, then it starts to look overworked. So over here, this is kind of where a test color might work out really well. If you're nervous about placing a color and you're not sure how it's going to look, try it out on a test piece of paper first. Let it dry and then add that layer over the top and see what you're going to get. Now, when you're adding layers over the top, I try not to go much darker than the color I already had before. So I might use the exact same color or just darken it a tiny, tiny bit. Because then it's a more gradual transition and you're just going to be happy. You can always go darker. It's harder to go lighter. So sometimes, yeah, that extra pushing around and trying to manipulate where you want the paint to go, that's the main culprit. Okay, so going back to this one, that's where we started. I'm just going to go right back over the top of where I originally painted. And if I was a little bit more careful, you wouldn't see any of the layer underneath. But you can see that I really darkened that up, but I still have that nice quality that watercolor has. I don't have any of these weird hard lines or the dark puddle puddles of paint. Now over here, I like where that's going, but I don't love it. So I've waited for it to dry. And now I'm just adding that extra little bit. I like that kind of bleed that has happened. So I'm leaving that, and I can go even darker just right in the center. And then I used a really watered down paint to kind of bring it out and blend it into that really light color that was on my rose. I'm starting to overwork this painting now. I'm not going to, though. Be sure to join me next week when I paint some Halloween moody flowers. And then be sure to subscribe to this channel because I do post every single week. Leave a comment down below and tell me which of these techniques has helped you the most. Thanks again for watching. Bye!